Minister, Patrick Nimo, my co-panelist, Emily of AfCFTA Secretariat, in charge of Director of Investments. Ladies and gentlemen, all other protocols observed. Representing the Association of Ghana Industries and the President of the Association. Manufacturing has long been considered the main driver of development and economic convergence. This is a statement from the World Economic Outlook, April 2018. This presentation today aims at taking a first step in rethinking policy under the rapidly shifting landscape in development paradigm of macroeconomics with theories and conceptual frameworks of structural transformation being overturned by new phenomena of deindustrialization and servicification. The task ahead is humbling, and our attempt here as an association is merely to initiate a debate which, in our view, could not be more timely or topical for countries seeking desperately ways to grow. Manufacturing strategy that focuses on economic fundamentals to promote export of tradable goods is needed to escape middle-income malaise suffered by many latecomers in the industrialization drive. And such countries, including that of Ghana, others like Kenya, Senegal, Tanzania, Malawi, and we find ourselves in the sub-Saharan space or in the African continent. Need for long-term perspective of policy making in order to avoid the middle-income trap. It's a big concern to the private sector and players in the industrial space, specifically manufacturing. A critical policy concern that we bring to the table for discussion and evaluation. Our policies are made with the mindset of having long-term impact. However, big concerns are our political interventions and political cycles that could interfere in policy formulation, conceptualization, and implementation. To the critical topic of the day, which says, what are the critical success factors that will make Ghana a shining example in the AfCFTA engagement? We capture this set few critical factors. One, as a structural transformation. Two, as competitiveness. Three, macroeconomic fundamentals. And four, are some policy interventions. I'll take up each and try to make a case why we believe a few of these, once harnessed properly, will put Ghana in the right step to succeed in this agenda. Our broad topic of government industrial agenda as one of the structural transformation activities is crucial. In the recent budget read, we have a clear project called the Obatampa Project. Reading through the Obatampa Project, one could list and elicit a number of interventions government intends to roll out as part of its continuity, consolidation, and completion agenda in the structural transformation as far as they could go. One critical one among the list is the bank development of a development bank. Over the years, we have seen the universal nature of most of our banks, deviating from some core critical interventions as captured by the Chief Director of MOTI regarding cost of funds for long-term interventions and medium-term projects. So this subject or this area that the government seeks to explore is an exciting news which we believe, when harnessed properly and the interventions rolled out carefully, could redefine the space of getting the access to the right type of funding for such a laudable project of AfCFTA. Other captured areas in the Obatampa project is the Building Ghana Light Manufacturing Industries. Exploring this will tell you that government intends to revisit what we call the import substitution industrialization. And as captured by the chief executive of GEPA, a clear plan has also been outlined for what we call the export promotion industrialization. In short, we can call it the ISI and the EPI. These are very laudable projects, granted that they could be rolled out carefully. However, the biggest challenge in this space of listed intents and budgeted for is the capacity to raise the requisite funding to roll out these laudable ideas captured under the Obatampa project. So as we engage government as a trade association, we seek to find out how government would go about raising the extra budgetary provision for the Obatampa project. Another step of the critical stages that we captured, it's under competitiveness. And not surprisingly, the Chief Director mentioned that in the speech of the Minister of Trade. Looking through the Obatampa project, one critical thing that we see under the competitiveness that will stimulate the entire chain or bring the coordination of the entire chain under the Obatampa project, but for funding, is what we call, it's the cost of electricity. For manufacturers and industrial players, one critical thing over the years that we have spoken about and advocated for has to do with the crop subsidy of the crop subsidy concept of electricity management, where we have industry subsidizing the domestic market. In other jurisdictions, including the sub-Saharan Africa and other neighbors close to us, you find the reverse. This is so critical as a success factor because we believe it has a structural underpinning issues that any government that comes into power with every good intention can be limited if this subject matter is not handled properly. In our deliberation, it's obvious that the cost of power to industry is pretty uncompetitive in the sub-region. And as we strive to go into AfCFTA with the EPI, which we call the Export Promotion Industrialization concept, it is very crucial to figure out how to harmonize the cost of electricity to make us very competitive on the sub-region. This is structural because it goes to the extent that for a ruling government to take such a decision to normalize or do this cross-subsidy concept, political cycles that roll in every 4 years can be a hindrance to this structural defect. that we advocate for. And the politicians acknowledge it. And to us, we believe for a bold politician who sees beyond his party and puts the country first, this will be one other bold decision that we expect our politicians or decision makers to take, just as was taken in the case of the financial reforms, to normalize and bring harmony in terms of cost of power to industry, so as we can build a relevant capacity to export into the neighboring countries. In the same set structural difficulties under the competitiveness, you will also find that a number of PPAs, that's the power purchasing agreement signed over the years, has today become another albatross on the decks of government regarding cost. And to us, one basic competitiveness issue has to do with the cost of transaction. And once all this accumulation or the aggregate will hit our bottom line and make us uncompetitive, it becomes challenging to galvanize the Ghanaian industries to strive to do an export-oriented industrialization. Another critical success factor we looked at has to do with trade facilitation measures. And as captured in the presentation, we have what we call the product standardization. In the case of the product standardization, in previous years or previous decades, standardization of industrialization concepts are crucial to the extent that deindustrialization, and in a recent World Bank report, flagged Ghana as one of the countries that are going through this phase. Once upon a time, we went through this phase where Ghana had a lot of industries all over the place. We all know the stories of the South Industrial Area, the Tama Industrial Area, and various industries that played out. Then Ghana was pursuing what we call the import substitution model, the import substitution industrialization concept. Mostly in the third case, you realize that the labor force from the agriculture or the agrarian industry moves all the way to manufacturing. That then sees the element of high productivity and therefore promotes the import substitution concept. This was flagged. You could see such examples in the South American countries like Brazil, Peru, and then you could go to Far East, into recent time, China, India, Thailand, Vietnam. So these concepts have been tried and tested. The deindustrialization aspect comes in when there's saturation and low standards of products that are being produced. And once this happens, and the country does not strategically deploy an EPI, what you call the export promotion industrialization concept, the stagnation then drowns and leads to deindustrialization. Over the years, this has happened to our country, Ghana. And as we strive to move into another phase of industrialization, such lessons need to be scrutinized and then find a nice circumvention way to work around this. So standardization, product standardization is very crucial. So in today's Ghana, you realize that what we call the servicification, service industry is what is driving the country. And then in the similar way, you realize that once the service industries are driving the country, the labor force from the agrarian industry moving into wholesale and retailing industry has become the norm of our Ghanaian economic dynamics. And therefore, as that becomes the case, deindustrialization has taken place. And this has taken place over the last 2 decades. So over the last 2 decades, you see a lot of wholesaling, retailing. Once you see that, it leads to a lot of low productivity and further on low formalization of the economy. So don't be surprised you see our economy very informalized. And once that becomes the case, it leads to low taxation. The social impact and social demand on our economic infrastructure is higher. and then the consequential issues of inability of government to rake in the relevant taxes to do more development. So today we see the path and the face of Ghana in terms of our deindustrialization and the servicification nature of our economy. So this is where we are. So as we desire to go back into industrialization and then go for after, once we have this broad knowledge of what the country is, it then aids us to circumvent and bring in the relevant interventions to take Ghana to the next stage. Other critical issues that we found out is the certificate of origin. Certificate of origin is very important because the product type that we seek to produce in Ghana to export or in Africa to export must be well defined in terms of the percentage mix that would define a product as a certificate of origin. Dispute resolution mechanisms and the tariff liberalization strategies are part of the critical issues that we believe will help our country. So therefore, if you look into the product segmentation of 90% product lines that will be liberalized, the 7% sensitive list and 3% exclusive, our contention is that selection of this product and prioritizing them for support is very critical in defining our success rate into AfCFTA. Then we could look at the broad macroeconomic indicators, and then when you do that, because of time, you would look at the inflationary policy rate, exchange rate, and another one, the convergence criteria of the ECOWAS sub-region. How are we faring? And you could see the blocks of the Francophone countries and the Anglophone countries. Our concern and threat is that due to a number of uncompetitive posture or items in our jurisdiction, the Southern Bloc, which is the South African bloc, looking at the interest rate, the North African bloc looking at the interest rate, inflationary rate, and their various indices, as against the Sub-Saharan Africans' performance. It then gives you a global picture of those who are ahead and those who have the capacity in the terms of the first mover advantage to take charge of this after. And therefore, we urge our governments to critically look at these interventions. And the final one that I put on the success factors is policy interventions. Some policy interventions that come up and has come up even in the recent budget has to do with some taxes. Some taxes to manufacturers and industry can be regressive. And once it is regressive, it then compounds the issue of cost of power, cost of credit, and then policy intervention like taxation, and i.e. industry has complained about the VAT levy, that is the National Health and the Get Fund that is slapped on the VAT rate. We believe we cannot still convert these levies into what we call the input-output and consider it as cost and then knock it off and the final consumer gets it. Such interventions, we believe, are structural defects that if we do not engage carefully to realign the challenge of manufacturing in Ghana, scaling up for AfCFTA will be daunting. We believe raising these concerns and policy issues will bring the room for dialogue and see how best we can streamline our activities. But the AfCFTA project is a good one, and we look forward to engaging and taking advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Humphrey Darke. He is the Vice President of AGI, and there'll be more opportunity for us to talk about the opportunities and challenges when we get into the main discussion just after the last presentation for this program. This is the graphic business Stanbic Breakfast Meeting on the Africa Free Trade Area as we look at the critical issues and the success and opportunities that it will present to us. Let me also now invite a rep from the Africa Free Trade Area Secretariat, Madame Mboro. She is here to give us the presentation, and if she can make it snap, maybe 5 minutes would do so that we get into the main discussion where we'll talk about more things. Thank you so much. Let's welcome her, please.
Thank you so much for inviting the AfCFTA Secretariat to this very important meeting. And I want to thank the CEO of Stanbic and the MD of Graphic Communications for making it possible to have this meeting today. Let me just say all protocols observed so that I keep within my five minutes. I'm representing today our SG, His Excellency Kyerematen, who would have definitely been very glad to be here today to be with you. but unfortunately, due to the exigencies of work, he could not be with us today. But I'll go straight to the presentation, and I think the speakers today have already made my work very easy. They have already explained why we really need the AfCFTA to be implemented so that we can be able to actually harness the opportunities that it does present to us. And I'll just go straight to say that, in Africa, we have about 107 borders. If you want to trade within Africa, you have to actually go through 107 borders. So you can imagine the amount of work that needs to be done to harmonize the going-ons of work at all those borders. Then, of course, my question then becomes, why the AfCFTA? It is because the AfCFTA is meant to deal with these issues that will ensure that we harmonize how to ensure that goods can move across borders easily. When we talk services, we say that services are borderless, but still you need to move people across borders. So we need to ensure that we make it as easy as possible in terms of people moving also across the borders. Then we have issues of legal fragmentation and need for then having harmonization in the legal framework that we use in the different countries in Africa so as to make sure that it's easier to move goods and services. And my co-panelist has made it very easy for me when he talked about servicification. Servicification is whereby you see the importance of the services sector in most of manufacturing and in the industry sector. And this is where you have the services sectors like financial services. You're not able to move anything without well-functioning financial services. The same for transport, the same for communication, and the same for professional services. So it has become clear that you actually need to ensure that as you liberalize trade in goods, you also have to liberalize trade in services so that you can have the easy movement of goods and services in the continent. And I think the issues of the numbers has already been covered, and in terms of also that we are looking at ensuring that we bring together the 3.4 trillion US dollars that is the GDP for Africa to actually work for the citizens of Africa. So that is the essence of the work that we are undertaking at the AfCFTA. And of course, it's really hard work to bring together 55 different member states of the African Union to come together and actually harmonize this work. Now, currently we have 54 countries that have already signed the agreement, and we have 36 that have ratified, which already shows you the interest of the continent to ensure that we actually trade under the AfCFTA. Now, what are the opportunities that are offered by the AfCFTA? If the agreement is operationalized, which is what now we have started the process of operationalization of the agreement, we will then see great opportunities coming up for the consumers in terms of consumer welfare gains, and this is in terms of ensuring that economies of scale, the choice of goods is taken care of. Yesterday I was in a meeting of young people, let me call it meeting of young people, it's called the Clubhouse. So they discuss different topics that affect the youth in the transformation of the economy. And we were discussing issues related to the AfCFTA. And someone actually asked, what if my company, my SME company, does not want to move outside Africa, outside its country? So how then do I gain from the AfCFTA agreement? And this is one of the ways that they will still gain. Even if you don't leave your country and you still work within your own country, like now we are talking Ghana, then you will still benefit because of the choices and the quality of goods that you will have. And someone even mentioned the issue of getting even nutritious foods from other parts of Africa. So still there is gains to be met, whether you move out of this country or not. So you will have more choices. You'll have goods coming from other countries that will give you quality and choice. Then you have the second issue, which is attracting investments. When you have economies of scale, definitely you will be able to perform more and better, because when we heard from the CEO of Stanbic, he talked about it's a chain of, now we can call it a chain of companies in different countries. They have been able to establish in different African countries. So because of economies of scale, they are able then to get more customers. Because if you can be able to move from one country, I think the headquarters is in South Africa. You have Ghana, you have Kenya, you have Uganda, you have Tanzania. So you have so many countries that now have a Stanbic Bank. So if the legal framework can also then be simplified, they will get into all African countries within a few years. So those are the kind of elements that we are talking about. How do we ensure that we have economies of scale to bring together all the different players? Then you have issues of investment facilitation. One of my dockets is actually dealing with investment-related issues. And now we're starting negotiations in issues related to investment. How do we facilitate investments to come into Africa? And it was quite interesting. Somebody did mention that we are not blocking our way. When we say implementation of the AfCFTA, it does not mean we are going to close ourselves in and only trade with Africa. We are also going to trade with the rest of the world. But we want to trade with the rest of the world in a more coordinated manner. So how do we then ensure that we actually encourage and facilitate investments coming into the African continent? Then a lot has been spoken about issues of job creation and industrialization. And that is where my co-panelist came in strongly to talk about issues related to industrialization, developing the value chains. How do we ensure that we, as African SMEs and even the larger companies, are able to actually get into the global value chains, and not only joining the global value chains, how can we create our own regional or continental value chain to ensure that we create our own, we facilitate trade among ourselves and also create wealth among ourselves here in Africa. Because everybody now is rushing to come into Africa. It is because now this is the virgin land, if you may call it that. So how do we ensure that even us as Africans gain from this transformation that is taking place in the African continent? Another key issue is the issue of elimination of or eradication of poverty. And according to statistics from the World Bank, we see that we shall be able, if well implemented, the AfCFTA will be able to remove at least 30 million people from extreme poverty and about 68 million from moderate poverty. So this is our chance to ensure that we implement the AfCFTA properly so that we can be able to gain this benefit of eliminating poverty in our continent. And of course, then there will be about a 7% increase in terms of GDP, and also help with issues related to distribution of wealth to women and also the unskilled labor. Moving on then to the status of the negotiations, because I'm sure you really want to hear where we have reached when it comes to the negotiations. And here just to mention that the AfCFTA is actually a flagship project of what we call the AU Agenda 2063, which is the Africa we want. So we want to move towards a common African continent where we have harmonized regulatory frameworks, where we speak as one in Africa. So it's the Africa we want. We want to go to the international world and say, here we are as one African continent, as a single market in Africa. So those are the projects or the issues that were felt important for us to come up with this AfCFTA flagship project of the AU. Just to say that we are nearly finalizing negotiations into key areas, and that is trade in goods and trade in services. We have a few outstanding issues that we are dealing with, but in principle, those negotiations are nearly finalized. And those are the key negotiations that will assist us also to start in earnest trading among each other. There is a few negotiations that are going to be taken in what we are calling phase 2 negotiations, and that is in terms of investment, negotiating an investment protocol, negotiating an intellectual property rights protocol, a protocol on competition policy, and another fourth protocol on e-commerce, or what now we are calling digital trade, because e-commerce is more the platforms. But for us, we want to talk about it in terms of transforming the digital economy in Africa. So we will be looking at it from the point of view of digital trade. And then maybe just to mention that on 21st March 2018, this agreement, the AfCFTA agreement, was signed in Kigali, Rwanda. And even at that signatory ceremony, you had a number of countries that actually signed the agreement. And I believe Ghana was among the countries that first signed the agreement that established the AfCFTA. And as I mentioned earlier, we already have 36 member states of the AU that have also ratified, and it actually came into force on 30th May 2019. Now, this, I think the lower part has already been discussed by my co-panelists, so I won't go deep into it. But the idea is that we shall fully liberalize 90% of non-sensitive products in the next, for non-LDC, which Ghana is among, because you are a non-LDC least developed country. You'll have a linear cut of between 1 and 5 years. So you will choose the products that you want to already start removing the tariffs on for between now and 5 years. I know you are under the ECOWAS, so there is what will be agreed under the ECOWAS, and those are still part of discussions that are going on as to how do you deal with non-LDCs and LDCs in the different customs union. You have the same in SACU, which is the Southern African Customs Union, and you also have the same problem in the East African Community, and in, I believe, even in CEMAC. So those are some of the issues that will then need to be considered and finalized within the next few years. Then you have 6 to 10 years to cut tariffs in what we call the sensitive products, and that has to only be about 7% of the products. But it's not only the products that are considered in terms of the liberalization. We also consider what is the volume of trade of those products that you're calling sensitive products in this case, to trading with other countries in Africa. So there is a number of considerations that have to be put in place when considering which products you will put in which category. You just don't say, because I want to protect my cocoa, it will be out completely, it will be among the exemption list. No, you have to consider also, what do you want to do with that cocoa? What is your strategic plan for the cocoa? So even as you stop exporting it to Switzerland, you still now have to think even further as to how then do you want to do it, and what value chains do you want to create, and where do you want to situate that product in your offer to the rest of Africa. Then just to mention that we have a number of offers. We call them offers. So those are the concessions or the commitment by the different member states of the AU to actually remove barriers to trade. And so before they are complete, we still call them offers until such a time when now they will be final. So we have a number of offers. We have offers from the EAC, the East African Community, from ECOWAS, from CEMAC, and then some individual member states. When you look at all of them, we have about 41 member states that have committed to liberalize trading goods at the AfCFTA level. And here we say that it's covering about 75% of the AU membership. And we hope that, and also when we talk rules of origin, which was also mentioned by my co-panelist, there is about 82 tariff lines that we have concluded work in terms of rules of origin. Then this one just is more to provide clarity in a pictorial form of how much work has already gone into the AfCFTA. And here just to say we have already finalized the protocol on goods, the protocol on trading services, and the protocol on rules and procedures for the dispute settlement disputes, and they have a number of annexes which are mentioned there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have work in terms of the protocol on competition, intellectual property rights, investment, and e-commerce or digital trade. The key milestones, and some of them I have pointed out, is that in 2012, the Assembly of Heads of States made a decision to establish the AfCFTA. In 2018, there was signature of the agreement that was done in Kigali, Rwanda on 21st March 2018. And in 2019, we had the AfCFTA agreement entered into force, and that is on 30th May. Then in 2019 still, we had the launch of the operational phase in Niamey, Niger, and that was on 7th July. Then in 2021, we had the start of implementation phase. As you all recall, you had a big function where we had the start of trading, as we like calling it. And maybe here just to say that we congratulate Ghana and South Africa for being the first countries that are actually showing, starting the whole process of starting trading to show that Africa is actually willing and able to actually trade among themselves. And we have the end of this year, we hope to conclude on all the outstanding issues. Now, I'll go quickly to just mention the status of implementation, and I'll be very fast because of the time. So I'll just mention why implementation matters and the main, let me say, instruments that we are developing at the Secretariat to ensure that implementation moves smoothly. And here we have the AfCFTA non-tariff mechanism for reporting that has already been established, and it's among the products, if I may call it that were given to our Secretary General, His Excellency Alan Kyerematen, by the AU Secretary, the AUC, when the negotiations were being finalized. Then you also have the AfCFTA tariff negotiations online portal, and you have the web-based and mobility AfCFTA application for business. You have what we are calling the Africa Trade Gateway, and this is also being developed with the assistance of the AfCFTA Bank, where we'll have like a one-stop shop for all issues related AfCFTA and trading within Africa. And you have different components that will be useful for SMEs when they want to trade within Africa. Maybe I can elaborate more during the discussion. We have the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. This one is meant to facilitate the payments across borders. And then we have the AfCFTA adjustment facility. A number of countries will lose their revenue once they liberalize. So this is a facility to assist state parties or member states when they liberalize and lose, and in cases where they lose revenue. And the last one is the African Business Council, which we hope to activate to bring together the voice of the business community. So I think I will stop there so that the moderator is not too upset with me. Thank you very much.